Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter of Experiencer Interviews. And today we've got another amazing story coming to us from the US. We have Pat Jackson on board today. Pat Jackson comes from law enforcement and was working Illuminati child abduction, trafficking, and SRA cases when becoming personally targeted by the Illuminati shadow government as a threat to exposing their crimes against children, and the deep black military who sought to weaponize her advanced psychic abilities. She was abducted into the Mylab deep black projects, spending 10 years in the dumps, where she would have her first encounters with malevolent ETs, working with the government. She was utilized as a pilot in both the Mylab program and the SSP. Pat would escape the Mylab program in 2010, which opened the floodgates to benevolent ET contact. The amount of ET contact Pat had captured the attention of experts in the fields of Mylab abductions, alien abduction, ex-military intelligence, the alphabet soup agencies, and ufology, as well as the CIA. These experts would spend the next 2 years dissecting Pat's experiences and contacts. They unanimously agreed Pat's case was not only legitimate, but that she was, quote, in the ET big leagues. A CIA agent would be attached to Pat for 7 years, the CIA considering she and her ET knowledge and contacts a threat to national security. She has detailed recall of her ET experiences without the need for hypnotic regression. She has had contact with over a dozen ET races, both malevolent and benevolent, while fully conscious and awake, several of whom have physically visited her here on the surface. Her primary contact is an angelic she calls Nas. Pat is retired now, but is still in contact with my guys, as she calls her ET contacts. In her free time, she works on remodeling her new lake home. So, Pat, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for asking me. Glad to be here.
Now, this interview's been a long time coming.
Oh, man, yeah. Yeah.
And to start off your huge, really story, you told me that you've got past, well, not really past memories, but you've got memories of coming to Earth. Can you get into that?
Yeah. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was a memory. I wasn't sure what it was because I couldn't make sense of it because I was like 3, 4 at the time. But in this, whatever it was, this teacher that I love very much and I were leaving a place. It was like a big white marble hall type building. And I knew it wasn't Earth. I couldn't have told you where it was, but it wasn't Earth. And we were both dressed in hooded white robes, kind of like monks wear. And we were walking toward a teleportation platform. And it stood in, I can only describe it as like a town square. And I remember feeling really sad that I was leaving this teacher I love so much behind. And I could feel his sadness at me leaving. I couldn't have told you where I was going or why I was going. I just knew it was on some kind of mission to help many souls that were in serious trouble. And I remember as we walked towards this teleportation platform, there was no sun. It was all a sky of stars around us, like a real deep midnight blue with all these beautiful stars. And I remember thinking, take a good look at that sky and remember it because you're never going to see it for a long time now. So as we walked, other people in hooded robes joined us. And those of us that were leaving got on this teleportation platform. And on either side of me were my 2 closest female friends on this platform. They would become my best friends in this life here. So we got on this teleportation platform, and 1 minute we were there and the next we were at our destination. But along the way, all these different beings from all over just appeared among us. Some were human, some were non-human. we all spoke different languages, we all dressed differently, but we all were united in this like sense of mission. So when we arrived at our destination, the leader of our group told us, you're in a holding area waiting to be born. And I was really confused by this because I thought, I already exist. Why would I need to be born? And then he told us helper ships are standing by to help you on your mission. And that was where it ended. Well, it wasn't until I began working with these experts that they told me that's an actual memory. So came in here and rock and roll.
Oh. So that's a memory for, is that like one of your earliest memories as a kid?
Yeah. And then the next thing, I was like 3 or 4 here. And again, I'd go out in the backyard at night and I'd sit there and I'd look up at the stars and I'd beg, please come get me. Please don't leave me here. This isn't my home. Please come get me. I didn't know who I was begging to come get me. I didn't know why I knew this wasn't my home. It was just a weird thing I did as a kid.
Wow.
And eventually, you grow up and you forget about it.
Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have 1 younger sister and 1 younger brother.
So are they like you?
No, no, like night and day.
Okay.
Night and day.
So you're the black sheep, sort of.
Yeah. Okay. Always have been.
Now, what are the helper ships?
Well, I thought, okay, it was at the Probe International Conference that John Leonard Walsh showed these photographs he'd taken of these helper ships. And I remember they were huge, and the people in the audience just gasped when they saw them. But he said, these are helper ships. And I was like, wait a minute. They told me there were helper ships. I never knew what the helper ships were. But yeah, Air Forces have helper ships all around the planet.
Wow. So, they're big, I suppose.
Huge. Well, like the one Naz commands, he commands a command ship, what we call a command ship. People here call them motherships. His is the size of a small planet and carries a crew of about 1 million,
Okay.
give or take.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're huge.
Now, how did your parents cope with this? Did you go to your mom with,
No,
mom?
I never talked to anybody about it. I kept it all to myself. I was very, very psychic as a kid, but I wouldn't tell anybody because I made the mistake of doing that. And all my little friends at the time, would call me witch, devil. I was raised in a super strict Catholic family, 12 years of parochial school. And of course, they were all taught, if you do anything like this, you're Satan, So I hid it all until after I was in college, really.
So did you have any visitation as a kid? Did beings come into your bedroom?
I had weird paranormal stuff, but there is nothing as a kid that I remember. I can't think of anything that I would say was ET related. Lots of weird paranormal stuff, but nothing ET. But then I wasn't interested in them. I never had an interest in ETs or UFOs before they actually started working on me and started showing up. And then I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but the paranormal tends to follow experiencers. So what happened? Did you have poltergeist stuff happen?
Well, like on my dad, when I was about 10, maybe, took us to Gettysburg. And I didn't want to go. I always wanted to be in the Olympics as a swimmer. So I was big time into swimming. I wanted to be in the pool. I did not want to go tramping through Gettysburg, where 1,000 guys I never knew from Adam bit the big one. It was like, no, Dad. Well, so we go to Gettysburg, and I was really tired because I'd been swimming late the night before. And I said, just go ahead. I'll catch up to you. I just want to sit down for a few minutes. And we were in Devil's Den. So I sat down against this boulder and I just leaned back and I closed my eyes. And you get that feeling you're not alone. The hair on my neck stood up. I thought, I'm not alone. And I opened my eyes. And I looked around. I looked to my right. Here sits a full-fledged manifestation of I don't remember if he's Union or Confederate, but a Civil War soldier. And he says, howdy, ma'am. And I'm trying to scream dad, but nothing's coming out. And I said, I'm looking at this guy up and down, and he's filthy. His boots are all muddy and beat up, and he looks like he hasn't bathed in a week, and there's a big red stain on his shirt and his jacket. And I remember I said to him, I'm not a ma'am, I'm a kid. And he just laughed. He said, so you are. He said, that's what I love about you all, Patty. You always tell it just like it is. And I'm thinking, how did he know my name? And I said, how'd you know my name? I just do. I said, well, aren't you going to tell me yours? Adam. So Adam and I started talking. I finally remember saying to him, just so you know, I think you're dead, like a ghost or something. Well, he thought that was hilarious. So we talked a little bit, and he said, you all have a secret you don't tell anybody. And I'm like, oh, how did he know my secret? And he said, you have a gift. You're going to use it to help many people. Stop hiding it. Stop hiding it. So we talked a while long, and finally he said, it's time for me to leave now. And he just disappeared into thin air. But I had already decided I wasn't going to say anything to anybody about this ghost visiting me, because who'd believe me anyway? So my dad was taking us to this Civil War museum. And for some reason, I was drawn to this one glass display case. And in it were a bunch of old Civil War photographs. And I was drawn to one in particular. And I looked at it, and it said, the caption under it said, anonymous soldier found in Devil's Den. He'd been shot in the chest and had the same stain. And I looked at his face, and I remember getting actually kind of mad. He wasn't anonymous. His name was Adam. Same face. It was the same guy.
It's beautiful.
It was wild, let me tell you.
Yeah.
But I kept that to myself. I never told anybody, probably until I was 30s, 40s, something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I kept a lot to myself because, who'd believe me?
So you had a normal childhood? Nothing major?
Yeah, very normal. Very normal, except for, the whole Catholic thing. I knew something was wrong there, and I had to get out of it, and I did the minute I was 18.
Okay. So, let me see. So what happened to you in your 20s?
Oh, in my 20s. I've had so much happen to me, and it's hard for me to.
So your ET involvement happened because you got into law enforcement and stuff like that?
I think they put me there.
Okay.
When I was 6, my mom died of pancreatic cancer. And at her wake, she appeared to me floating above her casket. She had all this brilliant white light around her. And she said, Patty, you're a strong girl. Now that I'm gone, it's up to you to carry on my work. When you grow up, you're going to do something great that will help many, many people. She said, people will speak of your strength to their grandchildren. And then she told me I was living in something she called the end times, when life as I knew it would end. And of course, I was only 6 years old. Didn't understand that message at all. So I just said, okay, Mom.
Okay.
And that was.
Okay. So what are the end times? Are we in the end times right now? Okay.
Yeah. But it's the end of life as we knew it, with the freedom we had and what we thought we knew. We're going to find out we knew nothing.
Okay.
everything was lies, deceptions, but it will lead to the unveiling of the whole truth.
So you're talking about disclosure or
No,
not that?
it's going to come from the guys upstairs.
Okay.
It's going to come from the guys upstairs. You'll never get disclosure down here, not full disclosure.
Okay. Pat, do you want to get into the Emmanuel story that you wanted to get into?
Yeah, I would be, I don't know, probably in my 50s when I finally discovered that teacher that I'd loved so much that I'd left behind was Emmanuel. And because I had left organized religion, I was an agnostic at the time. I didn't believe in any of it. He had to like use different characters to nudge me a bit at a time because I was such a skeptic. You know, I would have said, sure you are. Get lost, whoever you are, you know. So he had to nudge me to get to the point where he could reveal it was him. Or I would have said, you know. So yeah, he was the teacher I left behind.
Okay. Who is Emmanuel?
The one people here call Jesus. Although, if you ask him, are you Jesus? His response would be, that was never my name, but I am he.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Now, okay, let's get into your involvement with the, you got into the law enforcement, and what happened after that?
Yeah. Well, this was all I would come to discover in hindsight, that they had orchestrated every single event in my life to prepare me, to bring me into law enforcement, to do those Illuminati cases, to begin to expose all of this. In the Mylab group, there was a core group of us that were specifically charged with getting the intel on all this child trafficking and everything, and it was going on big time in the dumps, big time. I mean, there were kids in Florida sealing cages like animals. They were breeding kids down there for satanic ritual abuse. They had satanic rituals going down in the lowest level of dumps where they'd sacrifice these kids. I mean, it was just horrific what they were doing to these children. So I had to be prepared to go in and see all this. I mean, people in stasis tubes that they'd abducted, and many of them would be missing body parts that the military had used in cloning, human cloning. So I had to be prepared, because when you work those cases, you never lose what you see. It's so horrific. You don't, you're going to remember it the rest of your life. And it kind of takes a special breed of person that can shut it off when they need to and not get so wrapped up in it that they crash themselves. So they put me in law enforcement to start doing this. And at that time, Naz came to me and he said, it's time for you to do that something great. Now, he didn't tell me much, I'm sure, because he knew I would run like the wind in the opposite direction. That'd be the last they'd see of me. But so he told me very, very little. What will be done to you will involve a whole big conspiracy. We ask that you not retaliate against any of your attackers. The beating you will take on a scale of 1 to 10 will be an 8. Well, it was more like a 9.5 because they tried to kill me several times. But really, he told me very little all. And that was the first time our council appeared to me. And they said, are you willing to sacrifice all for the sake of the children? All meaning my life. And I thought, well, what's my one life compared to saving billions of children? I told them, yes. Well, I didn't know they meant the planet of the children. That's what they call Earth. But whatever, I still would have said yes. The very next day, I was being railroaded in the most barbaric fashion anybody could imagine. I mean, I was Illuminati targeted. I ended up losing everything. They killed my pets. They took our property. They bankrupted us. They killed my husband in 2008. I mean, it was horrific, horrific. I was so sick by then from what they'd done to me that my husband literally thought I was dying. I mean, they did a number on me. But as a result, that's how they put me in the Mylab program. And then I find out 7 years later, they had a CIA agent attached to me the whole time. So it was.
So your phone was tapped, I suppose?
Oh, God, yes. Mail tampered with. They used voice to skull on us, voice of God technology, physical torture sessions done remotely every night, night after night after night after night. Anything you could think of, they threw at us.
Okay.
They threw at us. They wanted to break me.
But how did you take part in the SSP program?
That, if you get put in the SSP, you're put there by the CIA. You're not put there by the military. You're put there by the CIA. I suppose because they were already utilizing me as a pilot when they discovered that I knew how to fly ET crafts and they hadn't shown me anything.
Okay.
So they knew I could, and I would find out years later. They knew I was from off planet because the CIA agent that had been attached to me told me he had terminal cancer. He admitted to me he was CIA, and he said, Pat, they know you're from off planet. They know you're an angelic, and the CIA is shit scared of you. So I thought, too bad, so sad for them. So.
Okay. Well, can you get into the your memories as a pilot, let's say?
Sure. You have a sketch of one of them where I'm flying a ship. That was an alien gray ship. I won't go into how it came about. I don't need to reveal my secrets to them about how I managed to do that. But I was flying an alien ship to go to our command ship to report to our commander something they were up to that I wanted to apprise him of, report to him. After they discovered I was a pilot, during one abduction, it was in Area 51, one of the Black Ops spooks took me through a huge hangar. And there were all these black, triangular, futuristic looking craft in there. Well, they were TR-3Bs, and I told, this panel about that. I didn't even know a TR-3B existed when I told them, here's what they look like, and here's how you fly them. And I told them stuff I couldn't or shouldn't have known because it was all top secret. So they took me down to this, I can only call it like a pilot's ready room. And there was a movie screener set in one wall. And I remember I was just furious because they'd made me participate in making some propaganda movie involving these craft they had that they were going to use to fool all the people. But yet you can't blow your cover because basically the Mylabs were the double agents of the angelics. They're the ones running the what do you call it? Running the show against the black forces. So they made me watch this movie, and I don't remember any of the movie. I remember the credits rolling at the end. And in the meantime, there had been a bunch of these pilots also dressed in the same black flight suits I was in. And I remember thinking when they came in, these guys are evil. Well, I would find out later they were clones. They were human clones. So they made us watch this movie, and at the very end of the movie, you know, as the pilots' names would scroll down, all these clones would be high-fiving each other like, we did such a good job, and we're gonna fool them all with this. And I remember it just made me sick. Well, at the very, very end of the credits, my name appeared in type so small you could barely read it. And they all turned on me. Who are you? You're a nobody. And I wasn't buying into it. I shot back at him. If I was such a nobody, you wouldn't be kidnapping me several times a week to bring me here. Well, I found out from the experts later, this was an actual mind control programming session. That's what the movie was. But it didn't work because the first thing they have to do is break down your self-esteem. And I didn't let them do that. I just told them basically, you know, screw you guys. Then after that, I was brought again to Area 51. And I was brought into this, it was a small office with just a desk behind or a chair behind the desk, and then facing the desk, a straight back chair. Well, the spook who brought me to that room pushed me into the chair. And there was a military guy sitting behind the desk. And he just stared at me for a few minutes. Like, I don't know if he was trying to size me up or what. And he finally says, you know about ET technology. Tell us about ET technology. You know how to fly ships. Tell us about their weapon systems. Tell us this, tell us that about the ships. He shoves a piece of paper across the desk at me and says, draw us a picture, draw us a map of the universe. So I did this little kid-like drawing because this guy was pissing me off. And when I get pissed off, I get very sarcastic. So I drew all these little stars and planets and a little rocket ship going up to him, and I shoved it back at him. He pulls out this roll and he unrolls it. And he shoves it at me and says, you read alien script, tell us what this says. Well, it was the schematics for a propulsion system. Tell us what this is. Tell us what it says. I said, it's a ship propulsion system, and I shoved it back at him. What does it say? Now he was really pissed me off. I said, it says batteries not included. Then he went on, tell us about Atlantis. And I'm thinking, well, now that's a very weird question to ask. Why would he want to know about Atlantis? So I decided, okay, you want to know about Atlantis? I'll tell you. I said, the powers that be sunk it when guys like you started playing God. And he kind of sat back in his chair. When I found out this guy's identity last year only, and I read his biography, he had gone diving looking for Atlantis. So that cleared that up. But it was all ET's related questions. You know, tell us what they're up to. Tell us what they tell you this. You know, all ET stuff about their tech, about their defense systems, especially. They are very interested in the weaponry. Stuff like that is all ET related. Well, apparently he thought I wasn't cooperative enough because he then had me thrown on a medical exam table in another room and had the Black Ops spooks gang rape me. But that had become fairly standard fare, especially for we females. You know, you just learn to divorce yourself from what's going on, take your mind somewhere else, and they have at it, and okay, over and done with.
Okay.
On to the next thing. They believed we had metaphysical knowledge buried in our brains or subconscious that they could get at. So they drug us for days on end, trying to get at this metaphysical knowledge they thought was there. And apparently I wasn't giving them anything because I think it was at the end of like a 3-day session. They brought 2 of the Drac reptilians in front of me with a live human being, and they tore him limb from limb and ate him. You're going to cooperate with us or they're going to eat you next. Okay. Hope I taste good, because I don't know what to tell you. But these guys were psycho. There was one of the interrogators. I don't remember ever being interrogated by him, but a lot of the other Mylabs do. They called him the professor. He was an Oriental guy. And he'd take us females, dress us up like dolls, chain us to a table, and he'd have a tea party with us. I'll leave it up to your imagination as to what the tea party consisted of. But yeah, these guys are sick. Very sick men. Very sick men.
Wow. Sick puppies.
They would send us on these black op missions. And in one of them, I was in the sea with a dolphin beside me. And this military guy in a black Kodiak raft was giving me instructions. You're going to go down there to this underwater base. You're going to deliver a message ultimatum. Now, I was an advanced scuba diver. I have nothing on but a wetsuit and a weight belt and some kind of communication device back behind my ear. And I'm thinking, how am I not going to drown doing this? I don't know how I didn't until years later I learned they taught Mylabs that were in this Project Seagate, they called it, to breathe water. So this dolphin and I swim down, and I don't want to be delivering this ultimatum or message or whatever. And we swim down a tunnel and we come up in a pool. And I'm looking at what I'm going to deliver this message to. And I'm like, oh, holy Christ, I'm in trouble here. Here stands this alligator standing on two legs, walks like us, looks exactly like an alligator, and it's grinning at me. And I'm like, okay, just deliver this message and get the hell out of here. So I deliver the message and it's still grinning at me. And I'm like, I'm out of here. Super intelligent, very intelligent. Telepathic communicator. So we delivered the dolphin and I get the hell out of there. Well, that morning, my friend James Bartley happened to be online. So I chatted with him. I said, you wouldn't believe what just happened. But I didn't want to tell him about the alligator because I thought, I just spent 2 years with all these guys tearing my case apart to make sure it was legitimate. I'm going to blow any legitimacy I have right out of the water if I tell them about this alligator that stood upright, that's very intelligent. So I kind of left that part out. But then I hear Naz, tell him about the alligator. Okay, well, I had done a sketch of it, so I emailed it over to him. I said, James, there was this alligator. I said, it was like 10 feet tall, and it stood upright, and it could communicate telepathically. And he goes, just real matter of factly, oh, yellow belly. I said, what? You mean these things really exist? Oh, yeah, the military call them yellow bellies. Well, I would come to learn that they are the security force for the Andromedans from Andromeda Galaxy. Well, during this abduction, there was one thing I kept hearing, and I remembered it, Simi, S-I-M-I. Well, none of us could make any sense out of what is Simi. At that point, my first Andromeda contact came in, Mayalto. I think I gave you a sketch of him. He's the Oriental race of the Andromedans. And he said, well, we kind of hijacked that Black Ops mission to test you. He said, you only got part of the word, assimilation. I said, well, what am I being assimilated into? And he said, into our culture. He said, there's a future event coming up that we'd like you to train with the yellow bellies on one of our biospheres in security for this future mission. Okay. They won't eat me, will they? No, they're not going to eat you. So I spent a month on the biosphere with them, training wonderful, wonderful creatures. Love them to pieces. Great senses of humor, not at all threatening. They're very peaceful, actually. But just their appearance would be enough to scare anybody here witless. You know, these guys are huge. And they all a lot of sharp teeth. But yeah, they were wonderful. I loved being on the biosphere. It was kind of weird at first because we do not have a great reputation out there. They see us as being very warlike barbarians for the most part. So I'd be walking down the ship hallways and the Andromeda crew with kids. The kids would hide behind their parents, and the parents would put themselves in between me and their children. It's like a shield. And they finally explained, it was finally explained to me, well, they do this because they think you're going to hurt their children. Well, we kind of had to spread the word around, no, she's not going to hurt your children. She loves children. She's not going to hurt your children. So gradually they grew less and less shy. And finally, when they learned I carried treats in my pocket, then I was okay. But they eventually learned, okay, they're not all that way like we've been told, because they see all of us that way as barbarians, basically.
How big was the biosphere?
Oh, geez. I think I gave you some diagrams of the decks. Gosh, it was smaller than NASA's ship, but it was still fairly good size. I mean, one deck alone looked like they had taken a chunk off their planet and just plopped it down on the ship. There were mountains, there were lakes, there were streams, you know. Okay. It was good sized. Any of them are, because they're built in space. They're too big, they can't come into our atmosphere. They have to stay stationed out there because they're just too big.
Can you get into more about Malto, the individual?
I found out later, he used to be a member of the Andromedan Council. He's, I suppose, what you call retired now. Very, very well respected. I found him absolutely delightful. Absolutely delightful. In fact, I miss having contact with him. I really do, because he's kind of retired now and I don't know what he's doing. I haven't heard. But very, very intelligent, very wise, very wise.
How tall was he?
I would say probably a foot taller than me. He wasn't real. Well, the Oriental races here are descended from the Oriental races in the Andromeda galaxy. So he's probably a little taller than the average Oriental is here.
Wow. You've sent me an image about the Greys working on your brain with
oh God. Yeah.
When did that happen?
I don't remember how I got on that ship. I know it was a ship because it was rounded and I could see no seams in the wall. The ships don't have seams, you know, they're just like molded. And I was laying on something that was like an autopsy table and I couldn't move. I could move my eyes and my head a little bit, but the rest of me, I couldn't move. I had nothing on. And I see this robotic arm come up down near my knees, kind of around there. And it started moving up and it had a huge long needle on it. I thought, they're going to stick this in my brain. But it was weird. I didn't feel afraid. I don't know why I didn't. So this thing comes up and yeah, I heard it go through the bone and into the brain. And it was a combination gray Mylab abduction from what I can tell. Because I heard a female voice audibly say, it's stuck, I can't get it out. And all the shuffling starts happening behind my head. I can't see what's going on because now even the head's paralyzed. I can't move. But to hear somebody audibly say that, because the ETs are all telepathic. So that means there was a human woman in there somewhere working with them. But yeah, and then after that happened, the next morning I woke up and I had this little painful lump in my head that was about the size of a grain of rice. And it's still there and it moves around under my scalp. And sometimes it'll start itching. Sometimes it'll get like this weird scab on it. So yeah, they put something in my brain. I don't know what.
So you don't know if it's an implant?
Probably. I would guess that it is. I would guess that it is because I have several implants.
So you talked about Mylabs. Now, do you remember being taken, like the actual?
Yeah. In fact, my husband, Naz, had me keeping journals of everything that happened during all these years. And my husband, he had been in the military. And at the time, I knew nothing about the military. I didn't know what a Q security clearance meant. Well, that's about as high as you can go. It's higher, much higher than the president of the United States. And Q deals with nuclear stuff. And he remembered one night them coming in, these military guys drugging us, but they hadn't drugged him enough, apparently. And he remembered us being loaded on a black helicopter. He remembered us being flown to a military installation. And they killed him before he ever even heard the term Mylab or knew that he had been one. And he had gotten everything right, how they do the abductions. And I do remember having this weird thing, like I'd be laying in my living room watching TV, and every few seconds I'd look at one window. And I never even realized I did this until one night it clicked. You're looking for a face to appear there. Now they have the technology. They don't have to bodily abduct you. They can just abduct consciousness out and do whatever they want with it. But back then we had to be bodily abducted. And like you had an experience where you woke up feeling very drugged.
Yeah. That's
in a Mylab. The early Mylab abductions, they drug.
Okay.
And you'd wake up feeling that way, like you'd been drugged.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Having the shadow beings after that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one time, because he talked about they could like sort of astrally abduct you, sort of.
They couldn't back then. They can now. They can withdraw the consciousness right out of the body.
Yeah.
And just leave the body behind, take consciousness, implant whatever they want, put it back.
Okay. Because
they don't have to take the bodily at all.
I think that's what happened because like I think last year I was dreaming that I was seeing this sort of black thing coming towards me. I'm with my brother, and eventually I find out when it gets closer, it's a sort of like a two-sided pyramid, like 3D. In the end, I realized that Googling, it was a merkaba. So that black, this two-sided pyramid flies towards me and then morphs into a gray. The gray says, you have an important mission. The gray disappears. Then a man and a woman, to me, they seemed like they were wearing like government attire.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, appear in front of me. And they start saying, like they're debriefing me. What did the gray say? What did the gray say? What
they
did the gray
always
say?
want to know, what are the aliens up to? Yeah.
And all I said to them was, the gray said that I had an important mission. They get up.
And that would set them off. Yeah.
they were super pissed. And then I wake up the next morning. So that's when I Google like two-sided pyramid. And then that's when I see a Merkaba. And the Merkaba is the transport vehicle for a soul. So the gray used its transport vehicle to fly to me. And then I might have probably got abducted, like you said.
Yeah. Oh yeah. In fact, our forces, the grays are gone now. They're hiding out on Phobos. But our forces captured one of their ships with 5,000 human souls aboard that they had absconded with. Yeah.
Wow.
That's why the dark forces call this their harvest of souls. So yeah, you're dead on, and that was definitely a Mylab abduction. Yeah.
You sent me images of I think a Draco might have scratched you.
Yeah. Well, many times, many times. But this one, I didn't think of anything at the time, but it was a right side up pi symbol. And I had that photo from years. It was gathering dust somewhere. When I came across an Australian Mylab who had the same mark in the same place, but hers was inverted, upside down. So I asked Naz about this, and I said, what is this? He said, one mark is not like the other. They have identified you as the highest of high, as one who can move mountains. They are scared of you. They're very afraid of you. And they know they cannot control you. I thought, Well, he actually used, when he told me about this, he used the word branded. And this had like a deja vu ring to it. So then he said, let me show you something. He got a black light and he shined it where that pie scratch had been. Even though it had disappeared years before, there it was under the black light. Now think about this. Okay, so I'm thinking, where have I heard about this branding before? And then I remembered one of the abduction cases I'd worked of Johnny Gosh, who was abducted from Iowa and ended up as one of Bush's child toys, sex toys. But they brand those kids in their pedophile ring, that they abduct into their pedophile ring. And just as mine had glowed under black light, his brand glowed under the black light. I think I sent you a picture of that too. So they brand people. The upside down marking meant they'd identified a soldier in the Sons of Light Army, in the Angelic Army. Well, if you think about what they're doing now, okay, this is the same luciferase they just put in the jibby jabs that makes things glow. That's why the government is changing out all the street lights now from regular to black lights, so that when you walk down the street with all their surveillance, if they see one of their brands glowing, they know you have to be eliminated. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah, we're really in a lot of hot water. A lot of hot water.
Okay, like you've been through a lot, but eventually the good ETs started to come into
it. It came to an end. I had a showdown with the Drac in December of 2010. And this time, for the first time ever, I knew an abduction was going to happen like 10 minutes before it actually did. I don't know if they wanted me to know or what was going on. Anyway, I was laying on my couch and boom, suddenly I'm somewhere and this Drac is in front of me. And it snarls at me, "We're going to kill you." By then, I was so beat up from what they'd done to me. I saw death as the only way out. So I said, okay, go ahead. I felt it physically scan my mind to see if I was bluffing. Apparently, it figured out I wasn't. So then it snarled, "We're going to kill them too." And it conjured up a holograph of my brother and sister. But what was weird was they were adults, long, but this was a hologram of them as little kids. I'm thinking, why is he showing them as little kids? But he said, "We're going to kill them too." So I said, shrugged and said, okay, go ahead. Scanned me a second time. But that works both ways. I was scanning it too. And I realized it doesn't know what to do with you. You are not responding to the fear it's trying to create. It grew enraged. And I saw it coming at me. They have 3 talons. And I saw it coming at me with 2 of them. And I tried to spin away to avoid getting scratched, but it caught me. It caught me here, and it raked all the way around to the middle of my back. I think I sent you a photo of that too. And then it just disappeared. And all my abductions ended. Military, alien, they all ended at that point. That was like the floodgates opening, because all of a sudden my house turned into benevolent ET Grand Central Station. I'm thinking, oh my God, what are my neighbors gonna think of all this? Not realizing realizing they can camouflage your ships so others don't even see them. So the first one, I think the first one in was Showdown.
Yep.
And I had gone through a lot that day. I was sound asleep on the couch. It was like 2 a.m. And I hear this voice in my head. You have to get up. You have to wake up now. And I'm like, what the hell? It's 2 a.m. Go to sleep like normal, sane people. And I rolled over to go back to sleep. No, you must get up now. Wake up. That time I said, bolt upright. Now I'm wide awake. What the hell? I look, and my bedroom door, I'd closed it before I'd laid down. Now it's standing wide open, and there's a silhouette of a figure standing in the doorway. So the first thing I thought was, okay, the military's messing with me again with their holograms. I had been kind of refurbishing all my flashlights I had. So I picked up this flashlight kit. I figure, okay, if I throw this at this figure and it goes through it, it's just a hologram. You can go back to sleep. So I wing this thing and I hear it hit something soft. And then I hear it just drop to the wood floor and roll. And this voice says, you really shouldn't throw things at me. He levitates my TV remote control off the table in front of me. And this thing is just spinning wildly in midair. Like, anything you can do, I'm going to outdo you. So knock it off. So I pick up this lantern flashlight, with the big beam on it. And I walk over to this guy and I'm shining it on him. And at first I wasn't sure if it was a male or a female because of that funky Roman haircut and almost pretty facial features. So I'm like, is this a male? What the hell is this? Well, by the time I got this chest, I had it figured out. This guy was eye candy. Oh, mama. That flashlight beam wasn't moving any too quickly. And finally he says, are you finished yet? Well, I guess if I don't want to spin in the air like my TV remote control, I am. Now, this visit came the night after the cabal pulled the Fukushima nuclear meltdown. And I knew what they were going to do. They were going to drag that radiation around the globe using the jet streams with HAARP and all that. And so Shada says to me, the only way to save the planet now. And he starts laying out this plan where humanity all gets together and we buy up the rainforest. I'm thinking, what the hell's that going to do? I said, you are never going to get 10 people here to work together enough to buy up the rainforest. He said, okay, I must leave then. He starts walking out into my living room, and I had an open concept living room dining area, and there was a big plate glass window there. He walks through my plate glass window, and he's walking out into my lawn, but it's like a person walking into a lake until they disappear beneath the surface. And as he does this like wake of perfectly bloomed flowers is springing up behind him. And I remember feeling so peaceful. And there was a beam of brilliant white light coming down, illuminating all this because it's still dark out. And someone later asked me, well, where was the beam of light coming from? And I said, well, I really don't know. I was scoping out his butt. I was about to learn there's a very big learning curve when it comes to us getting to know them and them getting to know us. So must have been a couple of weeks later, I guess. Naz came out of a meeting. I had to meet him on the ship, and he said, just ran into an acquaintance of yours. I said, really? Who was it? He said, put it this way. He wants me to ask you if you like the view from the rear. And I just kind of started laughing. I said, well, it depends on what view he's referring to. The flowers were a nice touch, but that butt of his. Whoa. And Naz just stared at me and he yells, are you trying to cause a galactic incident, woman, scoping out the behind of the Tau Cygni and the ambassador? Oops. Now I have to think quick. I said, I tell you what, just tell him that on Terra, it's considered a compliment if a woman scopes out a guy's butt because she thinks he's hot and he's got a nice butt. So I never heard anything more. And I'm wondering, well, okay, did things get smoothed over or not? Or, but you know, so a couple of weeks later, we were having another meeting upstairs, and some of the ground crew here had been brought up for it. And I said to one of the gals who was going to meet Shada after this meeting, I said, okay, after you do the introductory bow and all that, they have all this etiquette stuff they adhere to. I said, tell him Gracie told you he is hot and had a really nice button. Ask if you can see it. So Naz introduces him. Now he's a stickler on this protocol. And she says to him, my friend Gracie says you have a really nice butt. Mind if I take a look? He spun around so fast, I thought his head was going to fly off his shoulders. And Naz is standing there with this, just this look of shock on his face. And I said to him, pay attention, dear. Terran Diplomacy 101. It does not matter what star, planet, solar system, galaxy, universe you come from. You men are all the same. And putty in our hands. And I turned around and walked away, and he never corrected me again. And I was cool as shade up. So, yeah.
Funny.
You run into some funny stuff when you're getting to know them and they're getting to know us.
So Pat, you got another story to share with us?
Yeah. This one involved meeting the Arcturians, although I didn't know that's who it was when I met them. But I found myself I live among thousands of acres of forest. And I found myself in a forest clearing near my home. And there was another gal with me. She must have been a Mylab because she recognized me and called me by name, but I didn't recognize her at all. And as we were standing there, there's a ship approaching on the horizon. And who is ever in this ship, I'm telepathic, but they're beaming information at me so fast, it felt like my head was going to explode. They're telling me their whole history and how they've worked with Earth for 4,000 years behind the scenes, so on and so forth. Well, Joanne starts getting hysterical. They're going to abduct us. They're going to abduct us. Don't let them get us. Don't let them get us. And I said, no. These are friendlies. But she was so far gone already. She was hysterical. So who's ever in the ship is telling, we're going to trance Joanne. We're going to bring her up into the ship, and then we'll bring you up. We're going to do healing on both of you. Okay. So sure enough, Joanne immediately goes into a trance and she floats up into the ship. And it was the first time I remember consciously being beamed up into a ship, which was not at all unpleasant, really. So I get aboard, and these are little guys. They're like the size of the Greys. And I can't stand up in their ship because it's built for them. So they telepathically raise the ceiling so I can stand up. Their skin is like kind of an aqua blue color. No hair on their bodies, very elongated skulls. Their eyes are black like the Greys, but they're bigger. But they told me they don't use their eyes to see. They see with the backs of their heads. These guys were so loving, and you felt it the minute you were aboard. So he tells me, we brought you aboard for another reason. He said, I want to ask you something. And I said, okay. He said, do you think the Terrans are ready for ET contact? And I could feel he wanted the answer to be yes so badly. And I said, no. I said, they might be ready for somebody like the Alpha Centaurians who look just like them that they couldn't tell apart from themselves. But any non-human race, even some of the human races with different colored skin and stuff, I said, no. We'd have a bloodbath on our hands. We'd have to start defending ourselves because they'd want to shoot us and, you know, not knowing who we were or anything. I said, no, they're not ready. And I could tell he felt really, really sad about that, but I wasn't going to lie to the guy. So then he said, well, I'd like you to take you to my ship to do healing on you. Cool. I'm up for it. They'd been attacking me with their directed energy weapons for years by that time. And after they do this, you feel like really sick for the next 3-4 days, like you have a really bad case of flu. And I've been feeling like crap. So I said, yeah, by all means, take me. So these command ships, I was like flabbergasted. They're actually like biological entities. You walk onto this ship and you are one with the ship. It's monitoring your body functions. It's monitoring your mind. But not in an invasive way, more like in a, okay, we're going to adjust to what you need to feel while you're here so that you're comfortable. If you had a physical disability, like say you were a paraplegic, meant you set foot on that ship, you wouldn't need your wheelchair anymore. You'd be up walking. So he says, follow me, then take you to our healing bay. So he leads me into this room and it looks like a white padded sauna sanitarium. I'm thinking, okay, this is weird. He says, just stand there. He said, you're going to see some color. You're going to feel some energy. You're going to hear some like tones. He said, just stand there and this will only take a few seconds. So I stood there and I started hearing the tones and there's light all around me. And it wasn't even 30 seconds to this. Okay, you're done. I felt better than I had in years when they were through with me. So then he took me back home and I don't remember walking to my house, but I had cut the grass the day before and there was a real heavy dew that morning. I was barefoot, so when I got in the house, I had all this wet grass stuck to my feet. So I walked through my yard, but I don't remember it. And I didn't know who they were. So I said to Naz, who were these guys? The wise ones. Well, who are the wise ones? The wise ones, Gracie, that means do your homework, look it up, because he knows I learn more that way. Well, it didn't take me long to spot a picture of them, and I knew who they were. And everything fit. They were the master healers of the cosmos. They had worked with humanity for 4,000 years. They saw with the backs of their heads. They were some of the most proficient telecommunicators because they can transmit at 100 times what our brain can comprehend, which is why my head had felt like it was about to explode because it was coming at so fast. So that's how I learned who they were. And I was talking to James that morning and told him what had happened. And he said, wow, he said, the Arcturians never very, very rarely make actual physical contact with someone here. I thought, oh, I'm honored. So I've met many of them since because the personal healers on the ship are like Naz and his brother and stuff, they're all Arcturian. So
wow, you're so lucky.
I'm so honored that I've had the opportunities I have. I really am. I don't know why they had chosen me at that time, but I'm grateful for all of them I met because there's a whole cosmos out there. Some beings are not real nice, but others are just really wonderful, really wonderful.
So what are the bad ETs that you've met?
The Dracos, the Zeta reticulans, the Greys, as people call them, Regalians, which are cousins to the Dracos. Trying to think of who else. Men in Black. Those are the main four.
So when did you like meet up for the first time, MIB?
I was talking online to some of my psychic friends, and all of a sudden they all start going into this panic. Patty, go lock your doors, go lock your doors, go lock your doors. I thought, why should I go lock my doors? There's somebody, they're surrounding your house. They're surrounding your house. So I went out, sure enough, coming out of the wood, here's, I don't know if there are 5 or 6 of them, men in black. And I just turned around and hightailed it back into the house. I just, nope. Not dealing with these guys. Not a good vibe there.
So they had black suits with the hat.
Yeah, just like you see in the movies. Yeah, that's what they look like.
Oh yeah. Okay.
They're actually the tall whites, but yeah, that's what they look like.
You've got a pretty cool story about meeting merpeople.
Oh yeah, that was on the trip to the Ichabod city. The Ichabods, they don't have any contact whatsoever with any of us. We're such a hot mess, we could be psychologically damaging to them. But what they have undersea cities in our oceans, and their job is to try to keep our oceans from dying as the military tries to weaponize. So they had contacted the angelics and said, we want one of you to come here and see something that we found. We want you to examine it, look at it, and blah, blah, blah. So Naz's brother was going to be sent. I said, I want to go too. No, you are not going. They do not want contact with humans, period. You are not going. Well, God love Teeds. He said, well, now, wait a minute. He said, she's an advanced diver. I may need a pair of second hands on this. Let's at least ask them and see, would they let her come along? Whole lot of channel clearing went on. They finally said, yeah, I could go with them. I thought, oh, yes. It is like, you be on your best behavior or you are going to still get it from me when you return. Promise I will be. So it was a USO, and they have this ET material. It looks like glass, but it's indestructible. It can take pressures at that depth without crushing. And the craft we went down there was like a USO, but it was kind of like, I don't want to say a mini submarine. The inside was more like a futuristic conversion van, but it was made of this glass-like stuff, and it generates its own light so that you can see, because it's pitch black at those depths. So as we were getting close to this city, all of a sudden, all these merpeople are around us. I'm like, oh my God, they're real. And he said, well, Gracie, those are your forerunners. That's the forerunners of your land living, Terrans. And I found out later, this is not at all unusual. Syrians have aquatic races. The Androms have an aquatic race. So this is where we land dwellers came from. We came from the sea. They were very cool. The top half of them looks very much like us. Some had hair, some didn't, which I thought was kind of weird. Very big eyes that I suppose for adapting the life down there. But they're all swimming around us like they're going to escort us in. And I remember I was sitting there and I put my hand up to one on the side of this craft, and I put my hand up and it swam up and it put its hand next to mine. I thought, how cool. They're intelligent. I didn't get to communicate with them, but they were intelligent. So they escorted the rest of the way to this Ichabod city, which is a great big, it was huge, huge. It's like a domed glass structure. So we go enter this, and we're on some kind of thing that raises us up to the level of the, I don't know what you'd call it, pavement. I don't know. And here's a group of Ichabods waiting for us. And we can't even pronounce their language. They look like half frog, half fish. Their heads are very fish-like. They have a dorsal fin. They have 2 pectoral fins at the waist. They have gills on their side of their head that retract back because they have 2 respiratory systems, one for land, one for water. And the rest of them down looks like a frog. Very intelligent, very spiritual, but we can't pronounce their language at all. We're literally incapable of it. So we just decided we'd call the head spokesman for them Ichabod. So these guys are master geneticists. They do a lot of genetics. And mind you, I'm the first Terran they've ever seen. You know, I'm like, what is this thing? So we were standing there, and after the introductions are made and all that, and he's looking at me, and all of a sudden he just reaches out and grabs my boob. Well, it's not a sexual thing. I was the first human he ever saw, you know. So he's checking all the anatomy out. How does this all work? Did the same thing to teeth. But then they took us on a tour around this city. They have these huge pools. Now, dolphins and whales are ETs. And what a whale song is, they record ocean history. Both the dolphins and the whales do, but the whales transfer that history from pod to pod via the whale song. That's what a whale song is. So they had these huge pools where they'd come up, they'd record this history, they'd come up, and there were like really advanced computers around these pools. And they'd upload what they'd recorded into these computers. So basically they were the Ichabod's eyes, you know, and ears and whatever for anything going down there. So that was the first thing they showed us. And then they took us to the genetics lab. This place was huge, and they had like really long, almost like workbench type things. And out of the tops of these workbenches were live simulated models of different species, their bodies. You could see the bodies functioning. And I'm like, whoa. I said, not thinking, stupid. I said, you don't have any Terrans here. Ichabod's light comes on. May we scan you? Well, what the hell? Okay, what do we need to do? He said, take your clothes off, go stand in these 2 rings on the floor. So we did, and there was like a green, neon green kind of light in these rings on the floor. And this light came up and slowly, and it just came back down. He said, okay, put your clothes back on. He said, now follow me to this workbench. Here up out of the top of it come 2 life-size working models of Teeds and I. You can see our hearts beating. You can see our lungs expanding and contracting. You can see the blood running through the veins. I was like, oh, this is cool. So big into genetics. And as we were leaving, you could see all these Ichabods geneticists gathered around these 2 models, inspecting every little thing about them, which is kind of funny. So then they took us to show us their breeding pools. They have a breeding pool, and the merpeople have a breeding pool, have their own breeding pool. And they had asked us to describe human reproduction to them. So we did, and they must have been pretty grossed out. I'm pretty grossed out because Ichabod looked at me and said, I think we'll stick to egg laying. So they showed us these pools. The female lays the eggs in the pool. She watches them for the first 2 months. Then they hatch and develop to where they can go up on land. And from there, the male takes over their care. And they start spiritually training their offspring immediately once they're up on land. And the father is the primary caregiver after that. Now, I didn't see how the merpeople did it. They were out hunting or something. I don't know. But they weren't there inside. So I don't know. I would imagine they probably are egg layers too, since about half of them is a fish, basically. Then they took us to their, we call it a biosphere on our ship. I don't know what they call it, but it's a great big thing where they grow their own food aquaponically. And it's, to me, it's looking like mostly all seaweed. And I'm adventurous. I'll try stuff once, but seaweed, well, wouldn't you know it, they prepared a meal for us. I'm thinking, oh God, how am I going to get this bowl of seaweed down? Luckily, Teens came to my rescue. She's never dove this deep before, and it'd be better if she didn't eat much. And thank you, Teens. So after they give us this tour, okay, now it's time, we're going to go check out this, whatever it was they found. And here I'm thinking, okay, we're going to go in a submersible of some kind, right? They come out with these suits they had specially made for us. They're clear plastic, and they are about the thickness of saran wrap. Now at that depth, you're going to be crushed the minute the water hits you. I'm thinking, we're going to die. We're going to die. And they're putting this saran wrap thing on me. And they bring out a helmet. It looks like the top of a jellyfish. And he says, now, you'll have all the air you need to breathe. Don't even worry about it. You won't run out of air, none of that. He said, in these suits, if these boxes that they'd found, if any of them would explode or something, or give off a concussion wave, these suits will only allow you to be thrown backwards a couple feet. And I'm thinking, saran wrap's going to do this? Buddy, you are delusional. So we did take the same submersible. We went down there and to the site, but then we had to get out. And I'm thinking, we're going to die. We're going to die. We're going to die. I never felt any pressure. You could move so easily in these things because there was no weight to them. All the air you could breathe, not a problem. If I could have brought one of those back, I could have revolutionized the diving industry. So we checked them out, and I can't say too much about what they were except military weapons. Yeah, so we got rid of them. So we returned and we were debriefed as soon as we got back to the ship. And apparently word had already reached Nez that I had behaved myself. So the next day, so he asked, well, would it be okay if we sent her sister from home, the next day with him to see this place? Now, I never said anything to her about this life-size model they'd made of me. So we were chatting and she's like, sis, I walked into the genetics lab and there was this big, huge nude you there. So she picked up on it without me ever even saying anything about it. So those are the only two they've had contact with.
Wow.
Us two. Beautiful, beautiful beings. So love them. So because I'm such a skeptic, my guys will always give me at least real solid evidence of stuff. So about, I don't know, maybe a month later, I'm just surfing through the internet and I find this story on the Lake Baikal swimmers in Siberia. And I'm looking at the pictures of these things. I'm like, holy crap. They've got the thin suits on. They've got the jellyfish type helmets. They look almost like the Ichabods. They didn't have the pectoral fin or dorsal fin or pectoral fins, but they look frog-like and fish-like. So I'm guessing they're probably cousins. And I don't know if you want to hear the story of the divers in Lake Baikal that ran into them. But that confirmed to me, okay, you really did see these things. They do exist.
So how do you feel about all these adventures of yours?
Now it's like I've been through so much. It's just kind of like everyday normal life. It's, I don't get excited. It's like, oh, we're going to send you here. Okay. Yeah. You become so accustomed to it after you've been through so much, it just becomes normal to you.
You've got a Mexico mission story that you wanted to share.
Oh, yeah. Naz and I will conduct surface missions here together. So I had planned a trip. This was after I had just gotten out of the Mylabs. I had planned a trip to a cruise to Roatan to do some diving there. Naz comes to me and says, Gracie, you're probably going to want to kill me, but I need you to cancel your Roatan trip, and I need you to send you to Mexico. I'm like, tell me you're kidding. I just made all the arrangements for the Roatan trip. I know, but could you please cancel them? Because I really need you to do this. And I want you to take your niece with you. Okay. So cancel everything and start planning this Mexico trip. And he told me he'd help me, and he did. Guy should have been a travel agent. He was good. So my niece and I get down there, and they had the council. Before we went, our trip was September something to October 5th, the day after my birthday. All this weird stuff starts happening on the government because I had a website, and Naz would use this website to bait the cabal, knowing they were watching it. They had surveillance on it. So he put it on there. He and I were going to meet up down there. My niece and I. And he told me, he said, they're going to have their eyes on you. You're going to be watched. They'll have your eyes on you. Okay. All this weird stuff starts happening. All these FEMA orders come out for the Washington, D.C. district, like they're going to batten down the Capitol. No leave for troops. They all have to be such and such weapons certified. And these dates for all of this coincided exactly with the dates of this Mexico trip for my niece and I. Then they closed space, public access viewing to space. First time that I ever knew they did that. Obama, I think it was, Obama got caught secretly sending military troops to Syria to start World War III. That got leaked out, and it was confirmed. All this weird stuff starts happening. And then they spawned the hurricanes down there. One of them killed, I forget, 138 or something. And they had Hurricane Karen forming off of Florida, which was directly in our flight path down. Well, I knew right away what they're doing, so I called our council and I said, they're trying to prevent us from going down there. And they said, yes, they're trying to prevent you and Naz from meeting up. They won't be successful. Don't worry, we'll take care of you. Nothing will happen to you. They said, but prepare for an extended stay because they're going to try to detain you down there. Okay. I'm thinking, well, maybe I should leave my niece home. What are they going to do to us? So we got checked into it was an all-inclusive resort. Naz had told me, make reservations here. So the first night we're there, we're on the balcony. Now there was a ledge of maybe 4 feet wide, if that, off this balcony. And we're seaside. And all of a sudden my niece's eyes got real big and she goes, oh, yeah, bad luck. Here comes a USO flying straight towards us, just gliding toward us. They got so close to us, Ian, that if we had climbed out on that ledge, we could have touched that ship. That's how close it was. And I'm looking and nobody else is seeing this. And my niece is so stunned. She's just transfixed. I finally thought all eyes would be on. Yep, they're watching. They know we're supposed to meet Naz tomorrow morning. So I flipped them the American Eagle to let them know, yeah, we see you. Go away. As soon as I did that, started gliding off and just disappeared into thin air. So the mission was, people need to understand not only are the angelics back in physical bodies for this, so are the dark forces. Lucifer was here in a physical body. And while we were down in Mexico, he was down there with 3 New Agers conducting satanic rituals trying to access the higher dimensions. They failed because he knew their eyes were on us because we had gotten too close to what they were doing. Pyramids are ET power plants, basically. They use, the ships refuel there, but they're power plants. Well, what the dark forces were doing, there are so many pyramids down there, they were trying to link up all these pyramid power plants, basically, to make one big giant power plant that had enough energy to flip the Earth grid to negative energy, which would have killed everything on this planet within about 2 months. So we were the distraction that our guys upstairs could get into those where they were doing this with the pyramids and reverse everything. In the meantime, Naz doesn't show up. I'm like, well, he never doesn't not show up if he says he's going to be here. So I knew something was up, and I thought, well, where is he? So I was in the hotel room one afternoon. All of a sudden, he appears, teleports in, and he goes, and he's dressed in military camo. And I'm like, what the hell? And he only lets me see him long enough, and he's back out again. Well, come to find out, he had gone to Syria to stop them from starting World War III. Yeah, it was. I found out so much stuff after that trip that I had no idea what was going on while we were down there. It was like, and you could see how brilliantly they orchestrate things. I mean, the story's on my website. People can read it to see how brilliantly they are at orchestrating all the stuff that happens down here. It's amazing.
Hopefully you still had fun.
Yeah, I did. I had, it was always #1 on my bucket list to swim with dolphins, besides those in the SSP deep black crap. So I had arranged a dolphin swim for the 3 of us, thinking he would be there. So we went to this, and he had made a number of predictions. He said, mamas are going to bring their babies to you. They know you're coming and are very excited. They're going to do healing on you while you're in the water with them. So we get to this dolphin place. Now, normally these swims are 12 people to a swim, and they last an hour. The guy looks at us, and they didn't know it was my birthday. They had no idea. She says, follow me. We're going to take you to a special pool. They took us to the nursery pool, where guests usually are not allowed because the babies are in there with the mothers. They came and brought their babies to me, just like he said they would. And the one dolphin I had was named Electra. And the trainer kept, she kept splashing me and chattering at me. And, he'd tell her roll over, for me to give her belly rubs. And he was like, she's smiling. I never see her do that. And I said, let me just try something. I said, I'm not going to touch her. I won't hurt her or anything like that, because they're very protective. Thank God. And I just told her, would you bring your baby over to me? She swims off, comes back with her baby right up to me. And the trainer's like, I said, they're ET. They're telepathic. You don't have to talk to them verbally. Just, you can use your mind. They'll get it. But it was wonderful. Best birthday of my life. And as we were leaving, I hadn't told my niece anything about the healing they'd do. We got out of the pool, we were walking back to the resort. And she said, Aunt Pat, I feel so weird. I have this tingling through my whole body, and I feel so energized. And I thought, bingo, there it is. I had been limping. I have a bad hip, and I had been limping in pretty bad pain down there. after I got out of that pool, I never limped the rest of the time we were down there. No pain, nothing. Yeah. So it was quite the trip, quite the trip. And to this day, my niece still says, I still can't believe we saw that UFO.
You've got a pretty cool story regarding angelics healing your friend Rose.
Oh yeah. They had just killed my husband, and I said I was really, really beat up by then. And I had said to Naz, I can't do this alone anymore. You know, he's gone. I've got nobody now. There's nobody I can do this with.
Yeah.
I said, I need you to bring me a friend. Well, Rose was one of the two gals who stood beside me on the teleportation platform coming here. She was my best friend in this life. At the time my husband and I sold our place down south and moved north, she had been diagnosed with terminal lung cancer and been given less than 6 months to live. She was in the process of selling her home at the time. I gave her my address, new address and phone number. Never heard from her. I thought, well, she died. So after I said to Naz, I said, Naz, you have to bring me a friend that understands, that will believe what I'm going through, because you know nobody else is going to believe it. That afternoon, I get home. There's a message on my answering machine from Rose. I'm like, oh my God, I thought you were dead. She said, I lost your address. She said, I was cleaning out a box in my closet today and I found it. She said, I knew John was dead, but I figured I'd call you. Well, how did she know John was dead? You know? So we planned, she was going to drive up the next day so we could spend some time together and catch up, because we'd been separated now for 25 years by then. So she drives up and I said, Rose, what the hell happened? I thought you were dead. She said, I said to the Lord, I know you sent me here on a mission. It's up to you what you want to do. I don't feel I've finished that mission yet. So I'm asking if you would let me stay to finish it, but I leave it in your hands. Next time she went to an oncologist, not a cancer cell in her body. All the tumors in her lungs had disappeared. The doctors called her a medical miracle, but she and I know who fixed her. So unfortunately, she passed away from a stroke, but yeah, they cured her. I know one gal who I used to do readings for. She contacted me. She lived in New Orleans at the time Hurricane Katrina was going to happen. She said, would you ask Naz for me to please protect my house and my family? I said, sure. It took her 3 years. She spent 3 years tracking me down after Katrina and sent me pictures. Her entire neighborhood, which was blocks and blocks and blocks off, was nothing but matchsticks. And here, right in the middle of it, stood her house perfectly intact. The only damage to it was water damage. Okay. Everything else around her leveled. She said, thank Naz for me. I said, you can thank him. He'll hear you. So yeah, they can do miraculous stuff. They really can. They really can.
So let's finish today's interview. But before that, could you maybe get into maybe a last story or a closing statement, perhaps?
I think first of all, people who are ETs and contactees who are working on our side, know that you're going to have both messing with you, because this is a spiritual war. You're going to have the dark ETs working on you, trying to combat what the good guys are doing with you. So you're going to have a mixture of both working on you. Naz had asked me to pass on a message. Things are going to get rough ahead, people. But he wants you to know that if you're struggling or you need help, just talk to him. And he'll do what he can to help you. He just wanted to get that message out to everybody. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so
much. We're
much.
all one consciousness. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
You know, they're us, we're them. There's no separation between us.
Well, thanks for coming on finally.
Well, thank you for asking me.
And hopefully we can get you on for a part 2 because I had loads of fun today.
Okay. That sounds good to me, Ann.
And to those watching, hope you enjoyed today's interview. I'm your host, Mr. Great. More interviews coming up, and I'll see you guys next time. So, take care, everyone.
Bye-bye, Al.
Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Great, and thanks for watching today's episode. If you are an abductee, contactee, or experiencer, and you believe that your story could help others, please feel free to contact me through my YouTube channel email. When it comes to experiencers, the ET phenomena, and the future, remember, truth will out.